Welcome to day 2.
Alors,
Did everybody have fun?
bienvenue à notre convention et c'est avec grand bonheur et plaisir que nous allons accueillir toutes les questions qui vous viennent à l'esprit.
So away you go. No formal comments, just whatever's on your mind.
Yeah, fiscal monitor.
Sure. So Fiscal Monitor came out, and we know what it's showing, the fact that the government's gone into deficit. We know that we handed them a surplus back in November. So basically anything that has been taken in terms of decisions on spending, we'll see that in the Fiscal Monitor. And that now becomes a tool for us to see exactly how the government is spending money. And there's some good information in there. We're going to go through it a little bit more. But in terms of transparency, it's good to have these things to get a check on every month as to where finances are going. And what we're hearing here on convention is a concern. Nobody likes to see a deficit, especially conservatives. And what they say is be ready to show our fiscal prudence, and that when we run for election in 2019, it'll be showing Canadians that we're the ones that can manage the economy.
Parce que ce qui est sûr, c'est que ce qu'on a vu ce matin, c'est encore une fois, si besoin était, la démonstration que ce gouvernement-là a complètement perdu le contrôle des dépenses publiques. Nous, on a laissé une maison en ordre avec un surplus de 1 milliard de dollars et c'est le ministère des Finances qui l'a bien précisé lors de son bilan financier pour le mois de novembre l'année dernière. Donc, nous avons laissé un surplus de 1 milliard de dollars et aujourd'hui, les chiffres nous indiquent que le gouvernement a complètement perdu le contrôle. 9 milliards de déficit, c'est tout à fait inacceptable. On sait que les conservateurs sont réunis ici, on est à l'écoute de nos militants. Et ce qui est clair, c'est que les militants du Parti conservateur du Canada veulent toujours être présents pour surveiller les dépenses publiques. On va vraiment être le chien de garde du gouvernement concernant les dépenses publiques et on va être prêt en 2019 pour redresser les finances publiques du Canada.
Deltell, les libéraux, le gouvernement libéral prétend quand même, malgré tout, que vous avez laissé un déficit, mais un déficit de 10 milliards de dollars en un seul mois. Est-ce que vous avez déjà vu ça sur la scène fédérale?
Moi, je me
Madame Raitt, si vous voulez vous ajouter à ça.
Moi, je me souviens pas du tout d'avoir vu une si mauvaise gestion des finances publiques, mais c'est à l'image même de ce gouvernement-là. Oui. On se souvient que ce gouvernement-là s'était fait élire en disant des tout petits déficits de 10 milliards de dollars, c'est rendu 30 milliards, puis le premier ministre, il dit que ça peut être plus que ça. Ces gens-là sont fait élire en disant qu'il y aura un équilibre budgétaire à la suite des changements à l'impôt. C'est exactement le contraire, c'est un trou d'1,9 milliard de dollars. Donc, ce qui est clair, c'est que ce gouvernement-là ne sait pas gérer. Ils sont même pas capables de reconnaître que le ministère des Finances a statué que nous avons laissé un surplus de 1 milliard de dollars. Nous serons là pour les surveiller, on va continuer à le faire.
What we hear from the finance minister is two things. I agree completely with everything my colleague Gérard said, but we've heard from him say, I'm sick of this whole balanced budget thing. And then we hear the Prime Minister say last week in an interview that he actually doesn't really know how big the deficit is going to be, and we'll see how it works out. And that's the same Prime Minister who said balanced budgets will balance themselves. So what we get from the Fiscal Monitor is we get to be that watchdog. We get to see how this money is being spent, because I quite frankly don't think they understand it in their government right now.
Do you think that the deficit was preventable? I mean, given what was happening with revenue prices, commodities, corporate revenue, the bottom falling out of that, was it a preventable deficit?
You know what? They made significant moves. They made changes to the Income Tax Act, which has affected revenues. They have made changes in terms of departmental spending. That is completely within their control. Those things are important. Those things are to watch. And it's for them to explain to Canadians. We're the watchdogs. We're the ones who are going to be telling Canadian taxpayers that they have something they have to be careful of. Canadians don't like deficits. They know that. They accepted the $10 billion deficit that was promised to them. But for Canadians and especially for conservatives at this conference to know that we have a government and a prime minister who says he doesn't actually know how big the deficit is going to be at the end of his mandate and doesn't really seem to care how big it's going to be, that it'll all work out, I think it's important to have us making sure that we do these things.
What will happen if there's a recession?
It's for the government to figure out. I mean, obviously, the way we approach fiscal prudence is to ensure that you can make moves, that you have levers, that you have the ability to tack when you need to tack in order to save the economy and to do what you need to do. And that's why the debt-to-GDP ratio has always been held at a certain level and why we paid down debt when we first had surpluses. I don't know what tricks these guys have in the bag in order to prevent a recession or to help should that happen, but we hope the economy continues to move along. And quite frankly, what they need to do, they got to show us a jobs plan. They talk about this carbon-free economy in the future. Low-carbon economy is their mantle. But here's the point. You have to get from point A to point B. Where's the middle plan? Like, what's going to happen in between there? And I hope at their convention they're talking about these things.
There are people at this convention who would like the Conservatives to have a stronger policy on climate change, on the environment. What do you think of that, both of you? Is that an area that you think that perhaps the party didn't communicate well enough on and needs to do a better job before the next election or leading up to it?
Well, you're talking to an Ontario and Quebec MP, so that's... Go ahead, Gerard.
Well, I think it's a good occasion for all of us, and especially for the volunteer and member or person who support us, to listen to them and to talk. We have to talk to them, we have to listen to them, and it's a good occasion to them to propose new ideas, fresh ideas, and for sure we are very concerned with those issues. We always been concerned with that.
Yeah.
But the things are moving on, things that time have changed, but we have to move very seriously on those issues, and I think this convention is a good occasion to listen to our member, to our supporter, what they have to say about that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you've already covered this, but do you think that the Conservative government's record just before the election had no part to play in the position that the current government finds itself in?
In terms of finances?
In terms of finances, in terms of the reported deficit today.
Well, I would say this. I would say that the reality is that we had really good, strong fiscal measures in place. We handed them a balanced budget last year, first of all. We showed that we handed them a balanced budget at the end of the election in October, November. And we also put in place a framework for good service delivery by the Canadian Public Service. And that is something that has changed fundamentally. They are doing a lot of program spending. They are highly increasing the number of FTEs within the public service. And we had done a lot of work to ensure that we gave good services, but we did it efficiently. And I think they have opened the floodgates on spending.
Right, but can I just would you address, though, the Conservative projections last year were based on, for example, a certain price per barrel of oil, even though you projected it was going to go down.
Right.
And then the bottom fell out of it that nobody projected.
Sure.
So did you guys leave the books in good enough shape?
Sure we did, absolutely. But in terms of price per barrel, this is a government that in their budget, by building in that $6 billion cushion, is essentially saying that oil is going to be $25 a barrel. That's testimony we got at the Finance Committee from Jack Mintz. So in terms of what we left them, I think the figures show for themselves. Balanced budget 14-15. Rolling into this year, handed them a surplus. We handed them a great framework. But it's for the next government to make their own decisions, and the fiscal monitor is there to show us what decisions they're taking. If I could answer you on the environment, my touchstone on the environment are my kids, 14 and 11. They're being brought up in Ontario, and they go to Ontario schools. The environment, the planet, the health is number one issue in their schools. That's what they're being taught, and therefore that's what I hear about from home. So if it's important to my kids, it's going to be important to all the kids. So I want to make sure that we have a policy that makes sense to them based upon what they're learning in school and what they care about. And they do care about the environment, so I care about the environment. I came from Sydney, Nova Scotia, lived next to the tar ponds, for goodness sake, the coke ovens, for anyone who remembers that history. I really care about the environment, you know. I have a case where the environment took lives in my family as a result of industrial pollution. So, yeah, we care about it, and like Gérard said, we're going to talk about it openly. Our doors are open at this policy convention because we want to have our own story told by ourselves as opposed to somebody else telling it.
Ray, you've had a chance to talk to party members for a couple of days now. Are you give any more clarity now on whether you yourself will contest for leadership?
It's only day 2.
Okay, but you've been here for a little while. What kind of feedback are you getting from members who are talking about your own leadership? And
Yeah.
Are you any closer to making a decision?
So, people are really excited. I got to tell you one thing about the environment here. I don't know if you guys are feeling it. This is a pretty positive place, and there's a lot of excitement, and a lot of it has to do with people thinking about leadership. So we've got a couple who have announced that they're going to be seeking it, but we have this great panel today called Back to Blue, not Black and Blue, which we may be after we beat each other up for an hour and a half. But I think you'll see there who's serious and who's not serious in terms of going forward. Decision making is tough. You've got a lot of variables you got to put together, but I'm encouraged by the feedback I'm getting here, and I'll talk to as many people as I can. You got to get out of Ottawa to truly understand whether or not the brand that you put forward is something that Canadians in your membership is interested in, and that's so far so good. So I haven't heard anything negative yet, but that'll come.
Ms. Raitt.
Oh no, Catherine had a question.
Well, I wanted your perception of how much things have changed already. You talk about openness. I mean, is this a different party than it was?
Same party. It's the same party. It's just, listen, those who don't remember their mistakes are doomed to repeat them, right? So I'm obviously, Gérard comes from a great background of journalism, and he understands the importance of talking to constituents. I think that's why we were so successful in Quebec. I held on to my seat in the GTA because I talked openly to my constituents, and I went to every debate. So I think it's telling that we're here talking to you this morning, and that we want you to see what we talk about in policy shops. And you guys may think some of it is a little bit off plumb, but you know what? Canadians have different opinions. We all don't think the same way, and we might as well all hear about it.
C'est une excellente occasion pour nous, justement, d'écouter ce que les militants ont à nous dire. Vous avez plus de 2000 personnes d'un océan à l'autre qui sont ici réunies à Vancouver. C'est notre première occasion depuis la défaite électorale. Mais ce qu'on sent aussi, c'est des gens qui sont extrêmement positifs. Vous avez vu hier l'accueil chaleureux reçu par le premier ministre Harper. Vous avez vu l'ambiance chaleureuse qu'on a ici. Les gens sont là pour construire. Les gens sont là pour regarder en avant. Les gens sont là pour agir en fonction de l'avenir. On est bien fiers de notre bilan. Mais cette occasion-là, de rencontrer plus de 2000 militants, des gens qui nous soutiennent, avec qui on travaille très fort, et grâce à eux, on a été élus, les 99 députés, bien, c'est l'occasion d'avoir des débats. C'est tout à fait normal, dans quelque parti politique que ce soit, que des gens aient des divergences de vues. On est là pour en parler. La porte est ouverte pour les discussions. C'est ce qu'on va faire pendant 2-3 jours.
You say it's the same party and people are open, but one of the themes sort of running through some of the constitutional amendments, some of the policies, that the grassroots want more openness. I mean, we heard the heckler with Mr. Gerstein there, show us the papers, show us the transparency. What are your thoughts? Is the party really as open to its membership and their ideas as it could be?
Membership has the floor here, and it's for anyone who stands on that stage to listen to them. So I think it's great when people voice their opinions. They can do it in the hallways over coffee breaks. They can do it here on the floor of whatever statements are being made, and it makes sense. We're not necessarily afraid of that, and I think it does allow having membership to do that, which is extraordinary. I mean, if you're at an NDP convention, somebody already wrote that a point of order would have happened even before the convention had started. And I envy that because there's a lot of activism there. I think it's great you're seeing some activism here within the Conservative movement. If I look as well, a contentious issue is youth wing, no youth wing. And you're getting a lot of lobbying there, and you're going to see some different points of view on that. So it's going to be pretty exciting, and I have my button for that already. Yes, to youth wing.
Some of the leadership candidates not necessarily being serious. You said we'll see who's serious and who's not. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think some people are in different stages of discussion and communication. Two things you need in order to run. It's the same thing running for any kind of political office. You need to have volunteers, and you need to have money. So after we see what happens on the stage today, perhaps some people will determine whether or not they have the ear of the membership and if what they say makes sense to the rest of the membership. So there's a lot of us up there. I'm not going to name names. But you're investigative journalists. You guys figure out who I'm talking about.
So that means you're going to make up your minds? Is that what that
I think you have to. I think you have to make up your mind fairly soon. But we're in the process, and there's a lot going into
Jason
it.
suggested that a year is too long for a leadership race and that he'll decide by the end of the summer. But what are your thoughts on that? What's your timeline?
A year is a very long time.
Too long?
I made a commit. Well, it is what it is, Tonda. I mean, I can't really make the decision any different. You have to deal with the situation. But I would say this, that I made some commitments to my fellow colleagues when I said I was going to be the critic for finance. Obviously, it's a hot topic right now. I'm going to finish my job.
What about draft Rana? Because that's going to come up this morning at the constitutional session. And what are your thoughts on whether...
Well, we'll let the people decide. You know, in this specific issue, I think it's a good opportunity to let our member, our volunteer, those people who are here, to say what they want to say about that. But, you know, we have to take in mind that the first objective to be a candidate, for sure you need the support of a volunteer, you need the support of money. But first and foremost, you want to do it, yes or no. You want to have the will. And in that case, Madame Ambrose said clearly that she doesn't want to run. So we have to take that with us when we make the decision about that. But we'll let the people decide. And may I ask just a point when you talk about the Front canadien conservateur, we'll have a question period with that. There is a committee that will have open door, an open question period, so member will have to answer, to ask questions, they can have the opportunity to do so.
Ms. Raitt, local media question here. We're in Vancouver. This is an area that traditionally, specifically in the city of Vancouver, your party has had trouble making some inroads. There are some policy, proposals on the table that resonate with Vancouverites in particular. Talk about the environment, talk about some social issues, gay marriage. First of all, is there a message in the fact that this convention is taking place here in an area where you have had trouble? And secondly, what's your message to Vancouverites who look at your party and might say, there's not a lot there that sort of aligns with progressive or left coast views?
Well, I would say that they should take a hard look at our party and take a look at who's speaking here and what people are saying on the floor. I'd also say this, that there's some other other items on our panel, in our complement of policy discussions that are very specific to BC, like abandoned vessels, which is an important piece, like tankers. Those are things that we should have an open discussion on so that people in BC can understand where we were coming from. I did a lot of work on the 5 conditions that the Premier had with respect to the movement of oil to tidewater. And I did a lot of work with the Coast Guard out here, and I know we were on the right track. I know that we needed to communicate that better. So an open convention in Vancouver for those who are fiscally responsible and care about the finances of the country, which is what we lead with, should have comfort that we get the other side of it too. And that we're not only balanced in terms of our budgets, we're balanced in terms of what we feel the country should be doing.
And what about social policy in particular? Because there's a lot of Vancouverites, and we've been talking to them on our station, who say, you know, there's a lot of things that are still in your party that are pretty archaic.
The change that we're going to have in terms of recognizing the legal definition of marriage. Obviously, I'm in favor of getting rid of that from the book. But I would say this. On the floor, and it's going to show that we're more than just what people perceive us to be. But at the end of the day, opening our doors, having the policy convention here in Vancouver is the best advertising we can do for what our total brand is, as opposed to what others say our brand is. So I'd ask them to watch and feedback. You know, write us and tell us what you think. Let your EDA members know what you think. Have the discussions at the Starbucks and the coffee shops about what we were saying, because we do have something really great to offer the country.
Starbucks and Dairy Queen too.
Dairy Queen!
There are more Starbucks in Vancouver than Tim Hortons.
I do prefer Tim Hortons.
Are we all good, guys? Thank you very much. Have a
Thank you
good day.
so much, ladies and gentlemen. See you later.
Anna?